Hey folks, I'm attorney Roger P. Foley, and I was just watching the closing arguments in the state of Minnesota versus Chauvin, the police officer that is on trial for murder of George Floyd. As I listened to it, now I'm not going to talk to you about the merits of the case, but I want to talk to you about the organization of the attorneys. So the prosecutor gets up and he has, I don't know, approximately 2 hours of talking time, right? And during that time, he says, I'm just going to make a quote, a comment that he said. He says, excuse my background, I don't have my main man, Saria, putting the backgrounds on. He says that humans need air. And he keeps talking about 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Common sense, right? Captain Obvious tells you humans need air. George Floyd needed air. People need air. And he keeps saying 9:29. But rather than being organized, he's all over the place. He's talking about this expert, then he's talking about that expert. There's no transitions. And what I mean by transition, right? If you're reading a book and you finish a chapter, the chapter sort of ends, and then you know that a new chapter is ending. Well, how do you know that? Maybe the page isn't totally filled out, or the topic, slowly ends, and then you transition to a new topic. The prosecutor, I don't know, just horrible. As I was sitting there, I was thinking about just taking anyone who's watched the video, right? Forget all the experts, forget all the legalese, forget about all the attorneys and the experts and this person. Just get a regular guy up there and let him tell you about the George Floyd case, right? And for some reason, I don't know, maybe it's my comical nature, I think of Chris Rock getting up there, right? He's a comedian, he's famous, but I don't know, Chris Rock, makes me smile. I'm a fan. But I just picture Chris Rock going, ladies and gentlemen, the man, George Floyd, was claustrophobic. That's probably more Eddie Murphy. I'm not good at accents. I'm not a comedian, but I just picture the voice going, "Come on, people! Like you saw him put the knee on the neck. You saw him hold him down. You saw him stop resisting at some point. Anything past that point, folks, anything past that point is punishment. It's cruel. It's police misconduct. It's unnecessary. And it caused the death. It caused the death of George Floyd." Any of that. We heard, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for your time. And let me tell you a little bit about the rules and the procedures. And the judge is going to tell you this, and the judge is going to tell you that. And let me read to you a little bit about that. And this is what's going on. And you heard the witness say this, and you saw for 9 minutes and 29 seconds this knee on the neck that cut off circulation and caused the death of George Floyd. Is anyone listening? Like, anyone listening? Then you have the defense attorney come on, right? Well, again, I'm thinking as a defense attorney, man, I've encountered some tough prosecutors. I've encountered some prosecutors that can tell a story. I'm in Palm Beach County in Florida. I'm in Broward County in Florida. I'm in Miami. I'm in Martin County. And I know a lot of prosecutors that could just give a closing so much better. I've gone up against them. I've seen it. This prosecutor, for the first portion of the closing argument, just listen. He's not there to excite, but all the evidence has come in. All the evidence has come in for a particular reason, right? It's so in closing, he can shape it and mold it to the way he interprets it because he wants you to interpret it the way he's interpreting. When I say you, he wants the jury to interpret all of these experts, all of the evidence, all of the video. He wants them to interpret it one way, and that way should lead to a conviction. But he just talks like this and just says that that you saw Chauvin put his knee on his neck and the man couldn't breathe. Where's the storytelling? So then you get the defense attorney. Now, listen, both sides are both long. This is a long case, a long trial, very difficult. Kudos to both for doing the best they can. The defense attorney goes on. Thanks, everybody. Then he starts to talk about the process. And he starts to talk about reading all of the jury instructions. Everything that the judge is going to give you, he's going to give it to you in writing. Make sure you read all of it. Don't just look at a little part. Remember all of the facts so you can understand the totality of the circumstances. Then he starts to break things down. And then what I got from him was a reasonable police officer. And he starts talking about a reasonable police officer. He starts to talk about training, starts to talk about experience. He starts to talk about tactical positions. His voice goes up, his voice goes down. He steps over here to the podium. He looks over here at these jurors. And he gives, let's talk about this first. What does a reasonable officer do when he first approaches the scene? Well, he knows that there was a 911 call, right? He knows from that 911 call that the person allegedly gave counterfeit money. He also knows from that 911 call that the person was allegedly under the influence. Then he comes over as George Floyd is resisting getting in the vehicle, that there's 3 officers that are having a problem controlling him. And he's observing, he's not taking part, because a reasonable officer would take part. Now listen, these are not my arguments, folks. I'm not telling you what I think one way or the other. I'm analyzing the state and I'm analyzing the defense. And the defense just keeps going on. Says, I'm taking in, I got the information from 911. Now I'm visually observing what's going on. Now I'm looking over at the people that are starting to come around, right? Then I say, okay, take him out of the car and put him. And he resists and he pulls back a little bit. Okay, it's not a fight, it's not a battle, but this is what the defense attorney is explaining. Then he puts the rules up there, very, very logical, very succinct. Bam. Okay, now I'm going to go from that to this. Now I'm going to talk about the people, the crowd that's forming. I'm not going to call them a mob, but there's people there, right? Now I'm going to talk about the next step. I'm going to talk about the firefighter or the EMT that came over and, he got scared for a second because he didn't see them. Then he goes back to the other officer who's on the other corner, who's looking around, and his whole job, you see his body camera, his whole job, and he's explaining piece by piece. Every single part of this is succinct and logical. And what happens? I think that Chauvin, the police officer that's on trial, his chances of getting a not guilty just increased dramatically. Why? Because the defense attorney took all of the facts, all of the information, all the evidence that was allowed to be seen, and he molded it into very succinct, easily digestible pieces of information. The way he viewed it, an officer being reasonable, an officer seeing this, an officer seeing this, an officer seeing this, and he used the force necessary. Listen, whatever side you are on, whether Chauvin is guilty or innocent, that's not what I'm analyzing. I'm making no statements, no opinions about that. I'm simply talking about the attorneys. And when you watch the closing from the prosecutor and you watch the closing from the defense attorney, It's like first string versus sixth string. It's a huge difference. That's the only point of this video, folks. I'm attorney Roger P. Foley. Thanks for listening.